Good morning, members, officers. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of Perth and Kinross Council, today, Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2023. My name's Colin Stewart. I'm the convener of the committee. I'm joined at the top table by Alistair Bailey, the vice convener, by Ms Molly, the committee clerk, and by Lisa Simpson, the head of legal and governance services. Can I just remind committee members to keep their microphones on mute throughout the meeting unless they're speaking, and for members both in the chambers and online to use the chat box to attract my attention. Can I ask if we have any apologies?
Yes, convener, we have an apology from Councillor Forbes with Councillor Braun substituting. I think we have all members in the chamber this morning apart from Councillor Robertson. Can I just check we have Councillor Robertson online, please?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect of business on the agenda today? I'll take that as a no. Item 3 on the agenda. The minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of 26th of April. Can I ask if that can be agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 4 on the agenda, the outstanding business statement. Can I ask if there are any questions on the statement? Okay, thank you. I'll give a brief update on one or two points. In terms of the outstanding action item number 6, just to update that obviously an elected member briefing note was issued last week on the changes to the reporting process this year. We have with us today Claire Mailer and Charlene Guild, who will deliver a short presentation at committee meeting this morning on the process of moving away from the business management improvement plans, just before we go into the annual performance reports that we have on the agenda today. And for item 14, we are looking for a suitable date with the Health and Social Care Partnership to hold that briefing session. Can we note the outstanding business statement and remove completed actions from it? Great, thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda then is the first of 3 service annual performance reports. As I've just indicated, however, before we go into the 3 service annual performance reports, Claire and Charlene, I beg your pardon, Charlene Guild has a couple of slides to put up. So if I can pass over to Charlene, please.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, everyone. Last Tuesday, the 30th of June, we sent out an elected member briefing, which just gave an update on performance reporting moving forward that will also include planning for improvement. And I just wanted to come along today and just show you the elected member briefing in a graphic form. I think this makes it a little bit simpler for people. So essentially, if we go back to the first slide, we've got that there. So 2018 to 22, this just depicts what has gone before in terms of our reporting of annual corporate performance. So we obviously report to our corporate plan and the outcomes within that. But what we have done in the past is we have had an annual performance report, and then we've also had distinct service annual performance reports. And as a result of that, we've carried out our improvement planning in the same way. So we've had what we called service BMIPs, which was an improvement plan for each service within the organisation. They have essentially gone to 6 separate committees. They've taken up quite a lot of elected members' time in terms of reading. They're all quite substantial documents. So we have spoken to elected members, we have spoken to our senior managers, and we're looking at ways of streamlining and improving our performance and improvement reporting. So if I could just go briefly to the next slide, and what the next slide does is it lays out very clearly how we will now start to improve all of our performance reporting to not only the Scrutiny and Performance Committee but also to full council. So in future we will be reporting directly to the corporate plan and the 7 key strategic objectives within that. And that will look like an annual performance report that will report on the year past and give updates on where we are with all of the strategic priorities. But at the same time, we will also introduce a corporate improvement delivery plan, and that will set out the year ahead very clearly in terms of those strategic priorities. So it will pick up on areas of improvement from our annual report, and it will take those forward into the next 12 months. What this will allow us to do is keep our corporate plan very much alive and living document, and it will also allow us to be very accountable to our key performance priorities. You can also see through the slide that is up there the very clear thread between all of our improvement plans and annual reporting. So not only do we have our corporate annual performance report, which sets out all of our performance in terms of the whole organisation, but that also links all the way down through key council strategies to team plans and individual work plans. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mrs. Guild. Do we have any questions on this new streamlined approach from members? No? Hopefully that sounds constructive going forward, a streamlined way that we're not going to be continually putting effort into the generation of reports, but actually putting effort into the analysis of the performance and reporting of the performance to the appropriate committees. Particularly, I wanted to draw attention to the PK performance system. When that comes online, there have been some delays in the project management of that, but when that comes online, my ambition would be that we would be seeing performance in real time. So we would have perhaps a slot at the Scrutiny and Performance Committee to see what the latest data was, regardless of which area it was within, and then we could see and comment on and suggest improvement actions for the performance in real time. And I think that would be a more proactive way of doing things than waiting for the cycle of annual performance reports. Councillor Shards, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Convener. It was just a general question about the format of the papers that are and moving forward, and it was about timescales for the actions on all that, you know, how that would be reflected in the format of the reports that we would be seeing.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. So we will have 2 distinct reports. They will both come to Scrutiny and Performance and then to full council around about September, October time. They will be set out under the headings of each key strategic priority to keep it very clear. So rather than being distinct by service, they will actually gather all of the information by strategic priority. And what we will also do in terms of the corporate delivery improvement plan, we will also take some time at the end of the year to go out and consult with our communities and just be asking them. So in line with our budget consultation, we'll be asking them about our key priorities, where they think we should be allocating budget and their priorities as well. And it's our intention that that corporate delivery and improvement plan will kick in from the 1st of April next year. So you'll essentially see a year back and a year ahead.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions on that presentation, we'll move on to, as I said, the first of our service annual performance reports, which is for corporate and democratic services. I'm going to ask our Chief Operating Officer, Karen Donaldson, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. I'm pleased to present the Corporate and Democratic Services Annual Performance Report to members today. Our annual performance report presents the opportunity to share with you the breadth and reach of the services that we provide and our impact in all areas of the Council's work over 22-23. Our annual performance report also sets out the improvements that we have made, with many streams of work involving programmes that will continue into the current year as well. We've also taken the opportunity to describe where things haven't gone according to plan and our insight and learning from that. The annual performance report describes progress against our 6 priority themes, giving examples of what we have achieved and also next steps which are underway in the current year. The performance indicators described over pages 43 to 47 in the document pack describe the improvements in performance in 5 of the 8 areas where information is already available. Performance in the payment of invoices sampled that were paid within 30 days remains stable, and that's already around 94%. Sickness absence levels in 2 indicators have shown a decline in performance, and that's because sickness absence levels have actually increased. Managers continue to support staff who are absent through ill health, and there are a range of support measures: occupational health, counselling, supports for financial wellbeing, mental health, healthy eating, to name but a few. And this will be an area of focus for looking at improvements in the forthcoming year. We don't yet have the comparative information for other local authorities, but it is generally understood that there is wider societal increase in ill health figures. And it's important to remember that behind the headline numbers are our people, many of whom are experiencing challenging physical and mental health problems, and the underlying causes for these can be complex and varied. So as we seek to reduce the incidence of sickness absence from work, it's important that we also acknowledge both the human aspect as well as the loss of productivity that illness can bring. As Charlene set out earlier in this meeting today, 23-24 is a transitional year in terms of performance reporting arrangements. But that does not mean there is any less focus on managing and improving the performance of our services. Every team in Corporate and Democratic Services actively reviews operational performance and is involved in continuous improvement activity. However, fundamental redesign of key areas of support services is underway within property, within human resources and organisational development, within finance, strategic commissioning and procurement, and also customer services. Each of these projects is unique, and at their core they will bring together appropriate activities which are currently dispersed across various teams in the Council, looking to standardise and streamline processes, improving business systems and make best use of the talent across the organisation. All of this work is designed to enable us to become a more effective and efficient organisation, and there will be many opportunities to share detail with elected members during the forthcoming year. So as well as leading significant redesign and transformation of the core services that we provide, Corporate and Democratic Services are also key advisors for transformation and change across other teams. In conclusion, the Corporate and Democratic Services Annual Performance Report sets out how we connect and collaborate with teams across the Council, with partners and with the people in our communities. We support and enable delivery of services, act as strategic enablers of change and transformation, support the democratic process and civic functions, and also manage the governance framework. I'm joined today by a range of colleagues from across the service, and together we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite questions on the Corporate and Democratic Services report. Members. Okay, just to get everybody in the mood and warm things up, I'll ask my question then. Thank you very much for the introduction, Mrs. Donaldson. I was particularly taken aback to note the percentage reduction in energy consumption and the percentage reduction in our CO2 compared to the previous year. And indeed the actual energy costs at a time when the energy costs were going up. What I was wondering was, how did we manage that and how will we sustain that going forward? That seems like, those seem like particularly commendable figures to me.
If I could answer that, Councillor Stewart.
Please, Mr. Crawford, Head of Property.
Yeah, we've done our property services have, yes, we're reported 12% less consumption. We focused on the large buildings this year with building audits, and I think I would also put a lot of credit to the schools, the business managers and the head teachers who have helped with us in monitoring and using less energy. We put a big focus on the building management systems, as we have done for the last 6, 7, 8, 10 years as part of an overall project. This year was marginally warmer than previous years, so that has helped in terms of heating. But this project, the 12% reduction in consumption this year, 14% in carbon, is part of the last 10-year project, effectively, where we've taken 1/3 of the megawatt hours consumption of the council. So it is part. It's not a 1 year. It's not a 1 year reduction. It's actually part of a trend and a 10-year reduction to take our 80,000 megawatts consumption for a portfolio down to close to 50 million kilowatts at the moment.
Great, thank you very much. Vice Convener, you've got a question.
Thank you. My question is on page 44 of the report, the indicators about staff absence. 2 questions in quick succession, really. One is that it's worrying to see the increase to 13 days average in the latest reporting period. First question is, does that represent some kind of norm, return to a pre-COVID norm? Because I see the figures we have here just start in 2020-21, which was the first year impacted by COVID. Second question is, do we have any data that allows us to conclude whether or not the sickness absence is any different between the cohort of employees who predominantly now work from home versus the cohort who are completely office-based? Thank you.
Pauline Johnson, our HR manager, please.
The figures, I've not got figures for 1920, but it is going back to the pre-COVID arrangements, and we can give you the full trend if you want to see that at a later date. In terms of the recording, the notifiable infectious diseases meant that it wasn't recorded as sickness, so the trend has actually increased year on year as the changes to pre-COVID arrangements and reporting has actually been reintroduced. So we stopped recording COVID at the end of January 2023, and we were only recording notifiable infectious diseases from July 22 onwards, and that has had an impact on the sickness levels going up. In terms of short-term absences, I'm unable to identify at this point who is a hybrid worker and a home worker because we don't record that data. But I will do further analysis to establish what types of roles these sickness absences are in so that I can give you further update on that.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you're next.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to ask a question about improving our customer experience, and it's with regards to, on page 38, we talk about a Microsoft chatbot being piloted with HR as part of digital employee experience. Chatbots are one of the most frustrating things that you'll find on anybody's web page. I just wonder how we're going to develop that so it's actually successful. Thank you.
I'm going to need a hand identifying who's going to pick up chatbots?
Lynn Harris will answer that question.
Lynn Harris, please.
Hi, everyone. Yes, chatbots has been around for a number of years, but it's only in the recent 12 months that we in Perth and Kinross have started to investigate this more fully. And I think in terms of customer experience, it all comes down to consultation. So making sure that you're actually consulting appropriately and adequately with your client base, so be that employees or citizens. Then that allows us then to make sure that we do appropriate testing to make sure that the customer journey itself is actually fit for purpose, and we're gathering the right information and we're developing it and growing the knowledge base so that it improves. Because yes, we're absolutely clear in the fact that it can be frustrating. So it's making sure that we've got the right tests in place and we do the appropriate reviews.
And Mrs. Donaldson as well.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Allen, it's also fair to say that this is our first foray into using chatbots, and we're using that internally with our staff. So that will provide an opportunity to test that and learn from the experience, so that before it's any more widely rolled out, then we have some greater experience of how that works. Thank you.
Yes, and just to come in there again, the project team includes the HR team as well as IT, so that you've got this collective base from which to grow and develop the prototype. And then once we start to look externally with our clients and customers, that same approach will be developed. But yes, Karen says, this is our first foray into this. We're sort of quite early on in the pilot, but things are going really well for Perth and Kinross at the moment.
Thank you for those responses, and it's pleasing to hear that things are going really well. It'd be interesting to know at some stage how many people just type in agent, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Allen. And as if by magic, we are now going to go online for a question from Kinross's very own chatbot, Councillor Robertson.
I am not a robot. Could I ask a question about the decision-making processes as outlined in page 24? As it says in the paper, we've actually got a pilot, Kinross pilot scheme with regard to decision-making. But there's another 3 areas, I believe, to have suggested taking part in a devolved decision-making process. Are these 3 areas dependent on the outcome of the pilot in Kinross, the summary of the outcome of the pilot in Kinross? Are they going to go ahead come what may?
I think the answer to that question is that they are going to go ahead, but they will be informed by the outcomes of the Kinross pilot. But I don't know if the head of legal and governance wants to add anything to that. The head of legal and governance is happy to agree with me. So does that answer your question, Councillor Robertson?
Yes, it does. I think there'll be lessons to be learnt from the Kinross pilot, and it'd be good if these lessons are actually used in future devolved decision-making structures.
Absolutely. Lessons learned and continuous improvement is something that the council should always be all about. I think we can agree on that. Next question is from Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. I'm on page 43 at the back, looking at the percentage of invoices paid within 30 days, which is a good figure, of course. But I'm just wondering, do we offer an incentive for people to pay early, or conversely, do we advise a penalty if they don't? And if we don't do that, should we be doing it to increase that percentage? I know it's only 6-7%, but on the turnover we have, that's quite a sizable sum that is not paid within time. So is it something we should be looking at if we don't do it?
Thanks. I imagine that this is us paying invoices rather than invoices being paid to the council, but I'll out of spear knowledge of Mr. Mackenzie, our head of finance.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Bond, and good morning, councillors. The conveners actually answered the question for me, which was kind. It is absolutely us paying creditors rather than the other way about. So it's the council paying invoices rather than the other way about, Councillor Bond. But we'd be happy to take any discount which our suppliers would be able to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. This is why I always get confused with accountancy, because I always get it wrong from start to finish. So thank you for that. But I've misread it. I apologise.
Thank you. And the next question is from Councillor Massey.
Thank you, convener. I'm on page 45 of our pack. Absences amongst teachers. Now it says it's 8.9 on average. Now, knowing that there's 1,500 teachers within Perth and Kinross, is there a breakdown of the number of teachers who are on long-term sickness, the breakdown of the number of teachers who are actually off sick, because surely they're not all had a day off sick?
I'll pass back to Mrs. Johnson from HR for that, please.
Yeah, the 8.9 days is per the head count of the teacher population. If you're looking for a breakdown of short-term, medium and long-term of the teaching population, I'd need to give that separately.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Smith for a first question, then we'll come back to Councillor Allen for a second question.
Thank you, convener. My question is on page 45, sickness absences by teachers. During recent publicity we've seen in the national press, etc. Is there any figures in there about people, teachers being off regarding the disruption by pupils, violence, etc.? Thank you.
Mrs. Johnson.
I've not got a breakdown of the reasons for the absence, but we have been introduced new arrangements for reporting of violence and aggression, and we can look at whether or not there's been any increase, but there'll be no trend information because that was not recorded previously.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, your second question.
Thank you, convener. On page 46, it talks about the gender pay gap, and it talks about how in Perth and Kinross we are ahead for the female gender in pay. I was just wondering, given the furore UK-wide about gender pay gap, how do we get that out there and help people to benchmark us?
Mrs. Johnson.
The gender pay gap isn't actually reflective of our total workforce because we've got a split of 73% female, 27% male, and therefore it would not be, it would depend on the makeup of other organisations. So although we're in favour, positive in favour of female, that is representative of our overall total workforce population.
Thank you. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, convener. My question is related to page 45 about the sickness absence rates. And in the introduction, Mrs. Donaldson referred to the fact that we didn't have the comparative data to benchmark where we were with regards to other local authorities. And that's obviously quite an important element to knowing where we sit. And whether our figures are higher or lower than our other comparative local authorities. And it was just to wonder how that information will be reported, and is there a way that local authorities can produce the data around the same time so that we're all looking at the same data to know what the trends are and if actions that we're taking are having a significant impact.
Mrs. Donaldson.
Thank you for that question. I think it's just timing in the year, because that information will be shared and it will be published nationally when the LGBF indicators are published nationally later on in the year. We will be sharing that information across the heads of HR and the HR community. So we will start to see that information come forward quite soon, but formally it will be reported publicly through the LGBF framework.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, convener. I'm at page 43, in relation to financial management, and in particular the incredibly good performance in terms of council tax collection by the year end, which has increased from 96.6% in 2021 to 98.4% in 22-23. Truly is a remarkable performance in the economic climate that we're in. And my question is, can I ask if we have any information as to where that level of performance sits within other local authorities in Scotland? Thanks.
Mr. Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Drysdale, for your question. We do get a published table later in the year because these statistics are subject to audit. So it won't be until the audit process is complete for all 32 local authorities that we'll actually have that information. At least that's been my experience. Although the audits might be a little bit delayed, so that might take a bit of time to compile. The expectation would be, and I'm entirely speculating here, that would at worst be top 10, and I would expect us to be top 5. And we've been there before. In fact, last year, from memory, I think we were joint top in terms of collection statistics. So we have a very good track record. I don't know if colleagues from local taxes would wish to add anything to that, but we have a very good track record in terms of council tax collection. And part of that is the fact that we have 77% of our council taxpayers pay by direct debit, which is the most cost-efficient method for the council to recover our money. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to Councillor Braun, please.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Coming back to the accountancy theme again with Mr. Mackenzie. I'm on page 25, looking at budget monitoring, budget setting. It does actually use the word in there that the monitoring reports are impenetrable. I think I would have said confusing, to be honest, but I'm just wondering if there could be more of a briefing to members generally about how financial information is put across. I'm talking for myself as well as anybody else here that gets confusing. And perhaps when you get to the budget setting process, when BRGs are actually set up, there could be a more concise briefing on how the figures work. I think it's not the figure work, as I say, it's how it's presented, which is confusing. And I've been on the budget review groups ever since I was here. And I think every time all of us get confused on how this information is presented. So I'm just wondering if you could do something like that as we're getting close to that time now.
Thank you, Councillor
Mr. Mackenzie. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Apologies, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Braun. I'm happy to engage with elected members in any way that would be helpful in this matter. Impenetrable perhaps might not have been my term in terms of the financial reporting, and that is looked at by our external auditors, but I understand the complexities of the issues. It is a very, very complex landscape. We have a really complex organisation, and we're talking about £500 million of revenue every year. So I'm quite happy to engage with elected members in any way that would be helpful in terms of making some of that process more transparent or more understandable. Perhaps some of that might come back to just the mechanics of how the funding works. So quite happy to engage out with the committee and constructively with elected members in doing that. And thank you for feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. And I think just to add, Councillor Braun, that you, our Chief Accountant, Mr. Walker, was looking for input following the budget process in terms of suggestions for improvement. So certainly, I think we can pass your comments on, or you can pass your comments on and feed that into the process of improving the budget setting process. Do we have any other questions from members? Okay, we are invited to scrutinise and comment on the report. Can I ask if there are any broad general comments on the report? Councillor Shars.
Thank you, Convener. I think just a general comment is that, I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of work goes into all of this from officers across all the different services, and we're always very appreciative of all they do. I think on the kind of format of the report, I noticed that in the next one, the communities one, there is benchmarking figures in there, and I don't know if there's a way of Scotland's not a massive country, 32 local authorities. It's about the timing of the reporting back, so that we have that meaningful comparative data at the points that we're considering it, because I see that in the communities one there is some benchmarking in there, and I think that just allows us to see exactly where we sit in the national picture, and if the actions that officers are taking are having the impact that we're hoping that they are.
Okay, thank you for that. Vice Convener.
Thank you, Convener. Just echoing the comments of others, really, to the extent of saying that there's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes on these things, and to thank officers for the good news stories that are in there. It's all too easy for a councillor to show up in a loud shirt and then pick holes in things, but it's harder to actually do the work that goes into these things. And particularly wanted to call out, as Councillor Allen did, the good news story here on both the gender pay gap and the percentage of highest paid 5% employees who are women, that we are trending slightly towards in favour of women on both. But the numbers are so small that it means essentially we're delivering a level of equality. It could swing the other way very easily, but it's good that we're swinging the way we are. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Well.
It's just a comment again on the significant amount of work that's been done in the digital space to enhance and improve services, introduce new services, and look to seek to develop further efficiencies. So it's just again to draw the committee's attention to what's been done in that area and the significant impact it's having on Perth and Kinross Council.
Okay. Is that everybody? Great. Well, to add my thanks to those of other members, to all the officers who've been involved in preparation of the report, and to officers who've been available to answer members' questions today. Can we agree the report? Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is the annual report from the Communities Service. I'll ask Barbara Renton, the Executive Director of the Communities Service, to introduce the report. Director Renton.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. It's my privilege to introduce the Communities Annual Performance Report for the financial year 22-23. This provides a high-level overview of how the teams within the service have performed over the course of the last year. As such, it is always difficult to cover the range of services our wider team delivers. Within last year's Business Management and Improvement Plan, we set out a number of priority actions, and this annual performance report provides an update on these, and the final section outlines our progress in relation to the key performance targets set out last year. As outlined within the covering report, it also covers the work now undertaken within the Chief Exec Service, and Claire Mailer and her team are here to answer any questions you may have on those areas. The report highlights some of the positive achievements that we've made against our outcomes. This includes the establishment of the Anti-Poverty Task Group, actions to support our biodiversity through things like the Tayside Local Biodiversity Action Plan, the impact that the Tenancy Sustainment Fund has made in helping keep our tenants in their own homes, and a better deal and delivering a better deal with the cost of living pressures. It reflects an increase in library footfall over the course of the last year, and also picks out areas such as grants provided to city and town centre, retail and hospitality premises improvements for the Open for Business Fund, and the Adapt Your Property initiative as well. And through our Empty Homes initiative, we can also detail the number of properties that were assessed and the grants that were provided, and that the 18 long-term empty properties were brought back in as affordable housing. And we also rehoused 158 households through the rent bond guarantee, meeting many of our corporate priorities within that. There was, however, also significant unplanned work across the year. That would include our response as a result of the war in Ukraine and to those seeking asylum. To date, we continue corporately to work with our communities, and we've welcomed over 450 people from Ukraine and 109 people currently seeking asylum. However, the report also recognises some of the challenges that we still face as a service, and some areas which we need to make further improvements include the percentage of vacant retail units has increased compared to the previous year and is below the target. But equally, during the course of that year, to mitigate some of that, then we've provided further support to retail and other businesses through a range of measures, including business advice, destination promotion, and a range of other things. The number of households presenting as homeless increased compared to the previous year, and that follows several years of consecutive reductions in homeless presentations. But again, as you would imagine from the service, they have reacted to that very proactively, and we increased the proportion of allocations to homeless applicants in response to that increased demand and reduced supply of permanent accommodation as well. We have, alongside other parts of the council, struggled in some areas to recruit and retain staff, and this has impacted on our ability to deliver on some of the targets set and those areas of work. To resolve this, we are continuing to work closely with colleagues in HR to ensure that we are clearer about the benefits of working for the council and also widening our methods of advertising our vacancies. Where improvements are identified, these will be reflected in the corporate delivery and improvement plan as actions for the future. I am grateful to all officers across the service for their support while we continue, to deal with a number of challenges and issues, and for their ongoing commitment to doing the very best for the people of Perth and Kinross. As I have said many times, while we may have not got it right or made the progress we all would have liked during the course of the last year, it's not for the lack of commitment, dedication, passion and compassion from officers across the service. We are, Convener, more than happy to take any questions on the report, and there are a number of officers online to do that.
Thank you very much, Director Renton. And I think just reflecting back on what our Head of Innovation said earlier in the meeting about reports going to multiple committees, we can see on the front page of this that it's being considered not only here today, but at 3 other committees over the space of a month. Can I invite questions from members, please? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. Perhaps I've missed something here, but on page 61, it talks about tackling inequalities in Cooper Angus, etc. Are there plans to tackle inequalities in other parts of Perth and Kinross? Thank you.
Absolutely. Claire might want to come in at the back of me on this one, but the Community Planning Partnership agreed that there would be 2 key areas to focus work on. One was Cooper Angus, the other one was a part of Crieff, and that's why it's specifically mentioned, Councillor Allen. But as Claire will talk about then, inequalities are clear across the whole of the council area, and there is work being done in a number of those areas. Claire.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, absolutely. We are committed to tackling inequalities and indeed poverty across all of our areas, and through some of the work that we're doing, we're currently or relatively recently have initiated a data discovery project which very much is mapping poverty and indeed inequalities across all of our localities to ensure that we can really do that targeted work. There are a number of locality based approaches that are underway already. Barbara obviously has mentioned there the work within Cooper Angus, but work is underway. I think many elected members will be aware of the work that's underway within Letham. We've got work that's underway in Highland, Perthshire, Crieff and indeed a number of other localities. And what I would also say that as part of the day job. We've got staff teams out there working with and within our communities, and tackling poverty and inequality is what they do routinely as part of their day job.
Thank you. Councillor Shars.
Thank you, Convener. I should probably declare an interest in the point on page 75 that I'm going to bring up, and that's about the rollout of superfast, or not in our case, broadband. Anyone who's had the pleasure of being on a Teams call with me will know that this is something that is a real bugbear of mine. And I get that there's work being done around this, but it is a key national priority for the Scottish Government, and there are still far too many people in Perth and Kinross who live with less than adequate broadband provision. And I know it says here that about our comparative with other rural authorities, but it'd be really interesting to know what work has been done in those other authorities, and if there's an increased pace and scale of delivery in them, and what more, the increase of 2% during 22-23 is just, if that's the kind of pace that we're going to be going at, then people like us who live on the periphery of a village that has super fast broadband, but we can see where the cables are laid, but we can't access it, and we'll just be left to our sorrows.
Mr. Pinfield, please.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. We can't deny our geography. We're one of the most difficult geographies in Scotland and in the UK in order to get broadband to everybody. So we know that our performance on this, and it's through UK government and Scottish government delivering these programmes, it's very complicated to reach all the premises that we need to reach. So there's 3 different ways that we do that. One is through the state intervention programmes, and in Scotland that's the R100 programme, which is actually connecting premises now, particularly in the Kinross area, but also around Kinloch Rannoch at the moment. Then you've got the voucher programme, and the voucher programme has had a very slow take up. These are both UK government and Scottish government vouchers, but we've got 20 different suppliers now actually taking up vouchers and working with householders to connect those properties. And then you've still got the commercial rollout, and Openreach has a massive rollout programme. I know it's frustrating, the pace at which we can connect all these properties, but I'm afraid we're just in one of those areas that has a very difficult terrain in which to reach all these properties by fibre. But we keep tabs and we do everything that we can. We bid into UK government programme for the local full fibre network. We managed to connect our own premises to full fibre, and off the back of that, some of the new small companies, the altnets, have actually come in and started to connect premises at the edge of where the main programme delivery is in terms of providing broadband. So I know it's frustrating, but we're doing everything that we can to try and accelerate it in Perth and Kinross.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Shars wants to come in with a follow-up question. I suspect it's related to the issue of terrain which is not difficult to reach, but Councillor Shars.
Obviously, mind reading everyone else's supplementaries and answers today, Convener, is exactly that. We can see from our house, and we are not the only people in Perth and Kinross, so I speak on behalf of those people. We can see the road where the cables are laid, and it's just a lack of something by government. To be told that you can access vouchers, etc., is a huge amount of work for people. If this was it's deemed to be a utility, and we can see where the cables are laid, and yet we have no sign of any form of connection anytime soon. And along the road where we live, and I'm going to be very parochial, there are 4 or 5 people who run their own businesses from home who all struggle, and that is replicated across Perth and Kinross. So even if we could not look at the terrain argument, and I get that there are people who live up hills and where it's really difficult, but if we could try and fill these areas around the bits that have super fast, where it should be comparatively easy. I think it really is as simple as digging trenches and laying cables. We really need to start tackling that, because there are an awful lot of people, children, students trying to study at home who can't do it. and it is a really quick and easy fix that would get that 2% increase quite dramatically. Thank you.
Agreed. If I can just come back, we are actually in discussions with Openreach at the moment, and we're doing a lot of GIS mapping. So we are, Openreach are putting out more information now about where their main contract build is for the R100 programme, and we know where all the vouchers are as well. So we're trying to persuade Openreach for just the issue that you raise, which is where residents can see Openreach actually building only yards away from where their premises in, and yet they're not in the main programme. So we're trying to encourage Openreach to do overspill and to connect in those promises off the edge of the main contract build. So we are working on that.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I'm coming back on page 68 to do with the electric vehicle strategy. I know we've got funding now to boost electric chargers around the area. I'm just wondering how fast that's going to be done, because I think a report this week indicated that the sale of electric vehicles is now starting to decrease, predominantly because of people's concern about where they can charge their vehicles. But also, I think the technology in petrol cars now means that an average car can now do in excess of 50 miles to the gallon. So, you know, there's that side of it as well. But I'm just wondering how fast we're going to bring these out, because obviously it's that confidence in being able to charge which will boost sales again.
If I can take that question. So Climate Change and Sustainability Committee last week took the report in terms of our approach to the rollout of electric vehicle charging, and obviously working very closely with the Scottish Government, but also private providers, because clearly, as we've already discussed in terms of broadband, the geography of Perth and Kinross makes it quite unattractive in some areas to private providers for doing and putting in electric vehicle charging. Currently working on that plan, so I can't give you, Councillor Braun, any definitive dates for that, but we have a plan in relation to the additional funding that came through the budget in terms of increasing the fast and the super fast chargers across that. But as we work through that project, we'll be taking further reports back to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee and provide updates to all elected members on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Convener. I'm on page 60, and where it states we are recognised as sector leading in supporting tenants against mould and damp, which has become an issue nationwide due to cost of living crisis. Can you tell me what type of support we give to our tenants, and do we have any information on the number of houses affected by mould in Perth and Kinross? Thank you.
Elaine Ritchie, our Head of Housing.
Thank you, Councillor Massey, for the question. Yeah, we do quite a lot in terms of the housing service for mould and damp. We've got a really robust policy and procedure. So depending on how we are contacted, we generally provide advice or assistance. We would go out and investigate it and decide which course of action that we would want to take. Sometimes it's just remedial work in terms of ventilation, the behaviour of tenants in terms of ventilating their property, or it might be improvement works that we carry out. So it's very tailored to the tenant and also to the individual property. I don't have numbers with me. It's not a massive amount. The last time I looked at it was about 151 of our tenants had reported that, and that has seen a slight increase given the terrible case down in England and the promotion in the social media. However, it's something that we really take seriously. All our staff are trained, and we've got quite a lot of policies and procedures in place. I did circulate an elected members briefing regarding our position, and we're just looking to update that based on our action plan. So there will be some fresh information coming out quite shortly regarding our current position.
Thank you. Councillor Shars.
Thank you, Convener. Welcome the information on page 74 around the footfall in Perth city centre and the new counters that are being, and I see new counters being installed in May, so past, at the City Hall and near Costa, which I guess is really important in terms of giving that bigger picture. I think I raised at a previous committee about footfall in our small towns out with Perth, and whether there's been any thought or consideration to doing that, so we can monitor footfall in Kinross, Pitlochry, Auchterarder, Blairgowrie, other places.
Who's going to come in on that one?
I think that will be me. Once
Director
again, you know, sort of just looking at the list of officers that are here. Councillor Shires, I will need to come back to you on that particular point.
Thank you, Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Coming back on another question. I'm looking on page 77. Tenant satisfaction has dropped over the last 3 years down to 78.4, and I'm just want to clarify, is that related really to a lack of tradespeople, availability of tradespeople, rather than a lack of communication with our own staff? It's more difficult in getting materials and trade people in time.
Mrs. Ritchie.
Thanks, Councillor Braun, for the question. It's not related purely to our trade staff. It's just there's been a general decline in satisfaction with our tenants. We tried a new method. We had Knowledge Partnership to undertake our tenant satisfaction surveys, and it was a contact via in person and online. And the general satisfaction nationally has declined. People are just a wee bit scunnered, if that's the appropriate word, with the cost of living and whatnot. It's not got to do with our trades team or anything like that. In general, people are just a wee bit dissatisfied with quite a lot of things. So some of the comments and feedback we got were not related to a landlord function or in terms of what the housing service could do. It was things out with our control, but we work with other agencies and services to see how we could support our tenants where they are dissatisfied with other areas within the community and whatnot.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Convener. On page 72, it suggests that in collecting the rents, it seems to be fairly consistent, but our rent arrears seem to be going up rather than down, as was the target. I just wonder, given that the local authority average was 8.67 and our target was 8.4, is there any reason why we've moved from 10.69 to 11.45?
Elaine Ritchie again, I think.
Thanks for the question. That's a bit of an anomaly. That's a mistake, that 11.45. It was actually 11.09. It was just because the information was put in before all our scrutiny checks and our external validation was made, so it's quite less. But however, there has been an increase, and it's generally the cost of living impact. It's had a major impact. Tenancies have been ended with arrears as a result of that. Even though we've got substantial support and assistance in place for our tenants, it's just the economic challenges that many of our tenants are facing. However, to give reassurance, we've put new system in place. We've set up a centralised arrears team to support our tenants who are struggling as a result of cost of living or other factors, and we're beginning to see that figures decrease as we go. So we're closely monitoring that and look at on all avenues to make sure that we can support our tenants where possible.
And Director Renton, you want to come in?
Thank you, Convener. And as the report indicates, Councillor Allen, then that's the trend that is occurring nationally as well.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale next.
Thank you, Convener. Reference was made when Mrs. Renton gave her overview at the start of this item to the challenges this council faces in both recruitment and retention of staff, despite how wonderful it obviously is to work for PKC. So I'm, as you know, I'm directly involved in what are difficult national pay negotiations through COSLA. And my perception is that a particularly significant issue across Scotland is the recruitment and retention of officers such as social care workers, planning officials and others earning a middle range salary. Can officers comment on the extent to which that issue impacts Perth and Kinross Council? and what other issues are involved in making the recruitment and retention so challenging? Presumably rurality, which I can never say, is one of them. Thanks.
Pauline Johnson, please.
There's a shortage nationally in terms of particular roles. The pay and grading over the last few years has put a squeeze on some of the roles in the middle because we've been waiting the pay uplifts at the lower end to maintain the cost of living. And that has actually squeezed the pay and grading further up the scales. There are particular roles that are difficult to recruit to, not necessarily just rurality, but because other roles don't have the same level of demands in communities and economy, and people are attracted to those types of activities if they're trying to maintain cost of living. We are working with our colleagues across the council to look at promoting careers, looking at career fairs. We did one for social care. We had a really good response to that. Barbara Renton explained that we are working with her team in respect of promoting posts, using social media, actually trying to give a life experience rather than just trying to explain roles, and promote Perth and Kinross as an area to come and live and work. And therefore we're looking at all of the activities around recruitment to try and attract and retain individuals. We are also offering hybrid opportunities as far as reasonably practicable, because that's also having an impact on drift across Scotland in terms of people deciding to work in maybe higher paid jobs in cities because they're only having to travel there once or twice a week, and we're having to compete in that type of market.
Thank you for that answer, very helpful. Can I just develop it slightly in terms of how we go about trying to recruit appropriate staff? What level of link up does the council have with Skills Development Scotland? My group received a presentation from Skills Development Scotland on Monday, which was very interesting, but I personally wasn't previously aware of their role in terms of bringing people into employment. But I now have more information on that. But I just wondered if you can explain what level of link up PKC has with Skills Development Scotland. Thanks.
Yeah, we do have arrangements. We do work closely with Skills Development Scotland, particularly in terms of economic development, long-term unemployed schemes, modern apprenticeships, graduates. So we have good relations with the Skills Development Scotland team that are based in Poorhouse, and we work alongside them to promote opportunities. We have made linkage to the careers job centre, and we're working with them to actually get them to promote vacancies that are in Perth and Kinross, because previously they'd not really been promoting that to the same extent. So we are working closely with them. We also work with colleges and look at how we can do throughput in terms of what type of jobs we're looking for, and building that into learning and skills foundation in schools. So there is a broad range of work that goes on to try and optimise opportunities for those that might not be in an academic stream to promote Perth and Kinross as an employer of choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shars.
Thank you, Convener. My question's on page 83, and it's regarding the community asset transfers. I see that we're supporting 26 groups, and at least 9 of those groups are, it says here, are currently live cases. Have we actually completed any community asset transfers, and do we know how many of those 9 are likely to, have a positive outcome, and what work has been done? So I know that we do have a number of buildings which are not used as much as they could be, or not used at all, or which could be used differently. So just to get a bit of background around that, and also how community asset transfer is working in other comparator local authorities, to see how we're performing on that level.
Councillor Shires, there is a report going to the next Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee, which is our annual report on community asset transfer and participation requests. I am struggling at the moment to be able to find a draft of that report to be able to feedback properly, but if you can bear with me, I will be able to hopefully provide some of that information. We have a number of key successes, so that the former toilets just off South Street, for example, has been a successful transfer. At some points, it's not a straight community asset transfer. At other times, in the work that the team does with those interested in a building or a bit of land or whatever, then there'll be different agreements that might be work better for both that group and for the council as well. So, but as I say, that there's a full report going to the next committee, and if I can find it, I'll post something up in the chat, but we'll also then provide the detail of that in the lead up to the committee.
Thank you. And you've got a supplementary to that, Councillor Allen?
Yes, thank you, Convener. It's just really in relation to the numbers on the community asset transfer. We've jumped from 5 to 7 and then up to 26. Is there any particular reason that we've got so many applications?
We've been promoting it.
Thank you. Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Convener. On page 74, it talks about municipal waste collected or recycled or composted, and the target is 65% for 22-23, and we're currently sitting significantly below that, albeit it's unvalidated. Can I ask what measures have been taken to reach that target, and new initiatives that have been applied going forward to take this area closer to target? Thanks.
Director Renton.
Thank you, Convener. There are a number of initiatives that we have been taking forward. There is always an annual report that goes to committee in relation to our approach to managing waste. Over the course of the last year, then we have rolled out the 6 to the 6 campaign, which has made a significant difference in how and what people are recycling, and that has increased our recycling rates, and delighted to say that that particular project was an APSI Silver Award winner the week before last. Additionally, we've done a lot of work in terms of the containerisation of waste within Perth City. That's increasing our rates. And as we move forward, then there is an agreement to roll out a 4th bin, which will allow us to separate our waste more effectively, hopefully encourage more people to recycle more, which will reduce our costs. So there is a range of activities to try and promote that, Councillor Welsh.
Thank you.
Have we got any further questions? Not seeing any hands up in the room or anything in the chat. Okay, as before then, we are invited to scrutinise and comment on the report. Can I ask if there are any general comments or feedback to make on the report? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I'm going to probably be repeating myself, but as I always take the opportunity to say, in these difficult times, it is important to recognise the work of the Housing Service. And I take the opportunity to thank them once again for all the work they do in serving the people of Perth and Kinross. Of particular note is our Home First programme, which helps so many people presenting as homeless, moving them into a new home as quickly as possible and avoiding wherever possible the need for a temporary accommodation. Being homeless is a very stressful thing, and I think all the work they do should be appreciated by us all. So my thanks to them, and it is of course no surprise that Home First is the model which is held up for other authorities to copy. So a thank you to all of them. I can't name them all because we'd be here all morning individually naming people, but they all know who they are. So my thanks to them, and thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I think we'll make sure that those comments are passed back to the team. Have we got any more comments? Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I'd also like to thank the people involved throughout the report and all who are involved in day-to-day activity. I've had personal experience of it over the winter. I think they've done a superb job and I commend them all. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments, then I would like to thank all staff in community service who've input into the report before us today and who have been here and available to answer members' questions. Can we agree the report? Thank you. The next 3 items of business are going to, Vice Convener Bailey is going to lead the discussion on. Before we go into those ones, I would propose to take a short recess to allow some staff changeover and a bit of leg stretching. If we could be back in 8 minutes at 11:20, if that suits. Thank you. Thank you, members. Welcome back. I'm now going to hand over to the Vice Convener, Bailey, to lead the discussion on the next 3 papers.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and we're proceeding then on to item 7, which is the Education and Children's Services Annual Performance Report. I'd like to hand over to Sheena Devlin to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Convener. This report presents the Service Annual Performance Report for Education and Children's Services in 22-23. It details progress against targets and improvement actions over the last year against those that were identified in our Business Management Improvement Plan. Importantly, as well as the progress, we also share information about areas where progress has perhaps been limited, where targets have not been met, and I would wish to assure committee that these areas remain a focus for our work and that of the wider teams across Education and Children's Services. Notwithstanding the ongoing challenges presented as a legacy from the pandemic, improving outcomes for children, young people, families and for people in the justice system remains the core business of ECS. It remains my privilege to work alongside people who demonstrate commitment, creativity, perseverance, resilience and provide service day and daily. I extend my sincere thanks to each and every member of our teams for this. Vice Convener, I would wish to draw attention to 2 particular areas in the report on pages 29 and 30, where data for specific years is not included. And I'm aware that at pre-agenda this information was requested. The reason it's not included in the public report is because the data that we hold is incomplete. Direction from the Scottish Government at the time was that the gathering and then the submission of this specific data was not required given the circumstances that colleagues were working in. However, we do have a collation of the data that was collected and analysed that we hold for that year in these 2 areas and would intend, if committee approves, to circulate that specific data following this meeting to members. It will, of course, come with the necessary caveats for it to be considered alongside that of subsequent years. There are a range of officers, both in the chambers and online, who are happy to take any questions that members of the committee may have in relation to our paper. Thank you very much, Vice Convener.
Thank you very much, and yes, thank you. It would be very useful to share that data on an indicative basis. So we're through to questions now. Please intimate your questions in the chat as usual. And we have Councillor Massey up first. Please go ahead, Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm on page 14 of our pack. It says that we continue to implement the use of the new electronic system to track and monitor children's progress in early learning centre settings. It's really good that we are tracking the progress, and it does seem to have an advantage to the professionals. But my question is really, are the parents allowed to view this information? Can they see this information about their child and how they're getting on?
Thank you, Councillor Massey. I imagine they could make a subject matter access request at the very least, but Ben Scott to answer officially, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. That isn't something that we would ordinarily share with parents in terms of it being an electronic tracking system. It maybe wouldn't make too much sense to them, and just in the way that it's a complicated spreadsheet. But what I would like to reassure yourself and other elected members is that through other processes, parents are kept well informed around about their child's progress in ELC settings, and that would be through such things as an electronic system Seesaw, but it's much more friendly than a spreadsheet in terms of photographs and comments on progress about learning. Some settings may have physical children's profiles that the children are really owners of and would share with their parents. And we also have what we call floor books, which are the settings, journals and journeys of learning that all of the children, and indeed in some settings our parents, are very much part of adding to. So I hope that that reassures against that question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Councillor Shires for the next question, please.
Thank you, Vice Convener. My question's on page 21 of the pack, and it's regarding attendance. Through the subcommittee of learning and families, we've heard some really positive examples of work that's been done at Perth Grammar School, and then last week at Rattray Primary School with regards to improving attendance. A primary school is helpful, actually, a primary school setting and a secondary school setting, but the figures that are here are concerning, and it's about that trend of non-attendance at school. And what's been done to tackle it. I know that those two examples, there's some really creative work being done, and whether that's being shared across the whole school estate.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shires. Who would like to? Yep, at the back of the.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Attendance is indeed a real concern nationally as well as locally, and we have been experiencing attendance issues for a considerable amount of time within Perth and Kinross. Post-COVID, the attendance patterns have been very different, and so we're seeing new and more challenging aspects of attendance, which ranges from children and young people not adhering to the rules and routines of school, so they may well turn up and register in the morning but perhaps not visit all their classes, down to children who are really too anxious to attend school at all, and we've got a whole range of attendance issues between those two areas. We've got a range of approaches in relation to that, and we have been looking at emotionally based absence, and we've got a number of projects in relation to how we are dealing with those young people who really are too anxious to attend school because of anxiety related issues, and also some of the conduct issues about just making sure that young people get into school. We've introduced a range of different support staff through our staffing arrangements. We've introduced pupil care and welfare officers in our secondary schools and community link assistants in our primary schools, and early years family workers within our early years settings to work with families, to support families to get their children into school as part of a normal routine. But because of the issues that we're dealing with across Perth and Kinross and throughout the TRIC network that we have, and indeed nationally, we have been working across other local authorities to look at best practice as well as share our own. And this year's plan includes an attendance summit for Perth and Kinross, which is bringing together all of our head teachers and practitioners, our additional community supports and the work of the Educational Psychology Service to look really carefully at what it is we're doing, because we are investing quite heavily in interventions around attendance. And we are intending to look at that much more carefully to see what it is that's working and what do we need to do to make a bit more of a difference to that.
Thank you for that. I had a kind of supplementary along that, and that was about the way that we record why young people and children aren't at school. And I'm not sure if CMIS is sophisticated enough that it actually, you know, if a child's off because it's an emotional issue, a mental health issue, or a family bereavement, or, you know, it's not just they're absent, it's understanding why they're absent.
Thank you. Yes, the CMIS has a range of recording issues around attendance, which gives us some information. We don't tend to solely look to CMIS to give us that information. All of our quality improvement officers have attendance discussions with our schools 4 times a year. So in every term visit, attendance is on the agenda, and we are expecting our head teachers in our schools to look very carefully at the types of attendance issues that are within the school. So we ask about the percentage of attendance rates, and any children who have got percentages below 80%, we expect that actions are being taken for these individuals, and therefore those children who are not attending at all have very clear action plans, and we monitor that through our school improvement framework every term. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And then next, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask about the Curriculum for Excellence? I listened to the discussion on the radio, I think it was last week, about the apparent fall in standards in Scottish schools, and a lecturer in further education was saying that he put the blame down to Curriculum for Excellence, and yet it's saying that we are getting really good results under this scheme. Can someone comment as to what we're doing well, but what apparently other schools in Scotland, other education authorities in Scotland aren't doing?
Thank you for the question. Over to Sheena Devlin, please. Thanks.
Councillor Robertson, I'm only informed enough, and it's only appropriate enough that I comment in relation to Perth and Kinross, and would not wish to comment on performance of other schools in other local authorities. But in relation to Curriculum for Excellence, which has now been around for a good number of years, having its genesis back in 2005, it's not new, it's been around for a while. And if I were to just cut to the chase and answer about what makes, you know, the biggest difference to children and young people in terms of their attainment and the achievement of different outcomes, it would be about the quality of the learning and teaching that happens in every classroom across schools. And so what we do try to do through our quality improvement framework is work with our head teachers who are responsible for monitoring the quality of the learning and teaching in each of their establishments to help ensure it's the best it can be. So it would be inappropriate for me to retaliate in any way in relation to anything that a college lecturer may have provided in terms of their opinion. I can only share my view, which is backed up by the data that we have, and it may be that other individuals have opinions that are also backed up by different data that would help reinforce their position. I would just want to be clear that I am not making any case for and against any approach other than the thing that makes the biggest difference is the quality of the learning and teaching that happens in classrooms across Scotland. Thank you.
Can I just say I thank Ms Devlin for that response, and from what she says, I think that makes total sense. It's at the end of the day, it's all down to the quality of the teaching. So thanks for your response.
Okay, thank you both. Next up, Councillor Annan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Convener. I'm looking at page 24 of what was sent to me as a second or a supplementary. It's page 34 of 54. I hope everybody's got the same. It's Safe and Protected Learning and Families Committee. I'm just looking at some of the numbers there and the percentage of initial child protection case conferences within timescales. It's gone from a fairly consistent 78, 75 down to 64 against a target of 92. And similarly with the unborn cases, it's gone from 68 down to 35 with a target of 92. I'm just wondering how concerned we are about that and if we're reviewing staffing to help with the workload. Thank you.
Sharon Cooper to provide an answer on that one, please.
Thank you, Councillor. We are monitoring the statistics in relation to the child protection case conferences and the unborn baby case conferences. We're aware that the numbers have dropped significantly. Much of that has been about increased demand, increased complexity, and staff capacity, and as was mentioned earlier, recruitment issues. In order to meet need, I could assure you though that particularly for most of these case conferences, the families are being supported prior to the case conferences. So it's not that these families are not being supported, it's that we don't have capacity to take them to case conferences within the timescales. Unfortunately, sometimes with unborn babies, we are being notified late late in the pregnancy. That then makes the whole process out with timescales. Yes, we are looking at staffing, but we are hoping that we're a bit more on track this year in relation to some of the changes that we've made. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the answer there. It may not be something that you can share with me, but what are the timescales?
So within at the start of our involvement, if we become involved with a family, currently it's 21 days to child protection case conference if it's an initial child protection conference. When it's an unborn baby, we have to have that at conference at 28 weeks pregnant. Sometimes we're not notified of the pregnancy until after that point or very close to that point. So when particularly in the current situation where there are staffing issues, it makes it very difficult to pick up cases, do assessments, write reports and take it to conference without actually having I guess a full assessment of what actually the concerns are. So the timescales are quite tight and they are about to change in August, which is linked to the new Scottish Government child protection guidance.
Thank you, and obviously that's a very difficult area, so I wish you well with that. Thank you.
Thank you both. And actually, while we have you, Ms. Cooper, if I can be so bold as to jump in with a supplementary question on that same line of questioning. You mentioned there that one of the challenges is late notifications of the pregnancies. Is that just the nature of this area of work, or is that due to maybe in some cases the NHS or GPs not providing required notifications? I don't know who's required to notify, whether it's the mother or whether it's the health service, or is it a mix of the two? Thank you.
To be honest, I think it's probably a bit of both. I think it's about families or women where their lives are complicated and chaotic, not coming forward to present with their pregnancy. We have quite good relationships with our primarily midwives and health visiting, so they're quite good at notifying us when they're aware of situations. So it's probably a combination of many things, but post-COVID has made life quite difficult for some of these women in particular.
Thank you. Thanks. And then Councillor Braun for the next question, please.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm on page 35 of 54 of the supplementary pack. It's to do with criminal justice social work. Unpaid hours worked, completed, 16,700 against 20,000. There's no explanation of the shortfall, so I just wonder why we're about 3,300 hours short. Is it just people being absent or some other reason?
Who would wish to take that question? Sheena Devlin, thank you.
Beg your pardon. Thank you, Vice Convener. In terms of the question in relation to criminal justice services, if we note on the front of the report that we will be picking up on all of those aspects at housing and social wellbeing, and so today we don't have a colleague from that area who's able to come in and answer that level of detailed question. I don't have that information with me, and we had anticipated that those questions would be covered at Housing and Social Wellbeing, but we will provide that information post committee today. Thank you.
Councillor Braun, do you have a seat on that? Is that satisfactory or okay?
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you, Ms. Devlin. Yes, I'm on the Housing Committee, so I look forward to seeing that then. So thank you for the reply.
Thank you. And then Convener Stewart, please go ahead.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I was interested on page 20 of 54 about the key priority areas for action in terms of reducing and developing alternatives to exclusion and continuing to support schools to further reduce incidents of distress, challenging, violent or aggressive behaviour. I wondered whether officers thought that there might be circumstances in actual fact in which exclusion is the appropriate solution, not only for the children who are doing the distress, challenging, violent or aggressive behaviour, but for those who are affected by it in the rest of the class and the rest of the school.
Ms. Devlin.
Thank you, Convener. In relation to our exclusion guidance, the guidance is quite clear that exclusion remains an option, and there are occasions where that would indeed be appropriate, and that would be based on the context of the situation. So it's not something that we could necessarily prescribe exhaustively within guidance, because it requires professional judgment on behalf of the school in relation to each of those contexts. So I thought my voice had suddenly lowered there, far deeper than I had even I had known. So it would very much be about the context of the school there. What we do know is that for young people who are excluded from school, particularly on multiple occasions, their life outcomes are really not very good. We also know, for example, some time ago there was an analysis done of young people in Polmont Young Offenders Institution, and a significantly high percentage of the population at that point had been excluded from school on multiple occasions. It is a clear indicator of not good outcomes later on in life. That does not mean to say, however, that there are not sometimes where that is an appropriate action to take, as you said, Convener, for the benefit of the young person involved and also those around about them. And so our guidance does permit that. Thank you.
Thanks. And a follow-up, if that's okay, about the tracking of data. So tracking of data in the first 6 weeks of term 3 for children who had 3 or more incident reports in term 1. I'm just wondering how quickly we respond to spikes in distress, challenging, violent or aggressive behaviour. How live is that data and how quickly do we respond? Because obviously that will also help in terms of reducing exclusions if we put the right nurturing support in early enough. So how often is that data reviewed and how quickly do we respond?
Thank you, Convener. We respond in a range of ways. So the first obviously response is within the school setting. So there is, and Perth and Kinross have a very good recording system which is electronic, and it's been worked on over a number of years alongside our trade unions and our practitioners. And our MIS team to make it as easy as possible to do that recording. So where a member of staff perceives to have been at the other end of a violent or aggressive behaviour, whether that's verbal or indeed physical, which is often the case mostly within younger children, then there is an immediate response from the school, and therefore the line manager of that person who's been affected does an immediate debrief in relation to that incident, first of all to check on the member of staff's well-being, but at a later date to look at the circumstances which surrounded those incidents, to look at, you know, the antecedents and perhaps any triggers, to try and develop whether there's a pattern of behaviour that could be intervened, and then, you know, interventions put in place to reduce those incidents. And that's really about the knowledge of the child within the school. Those recordings, though, are sent to our Quality Improvement Officer team, and so as soon as a report is put onto the system, that is immediately then sent to the Quality Improvement Officer, who then tracks the numbers, and if there are multiple incidents, so as it says within our report, more than 3, that triggers then a conversation with the ASN Quality Improvement Officer, just to talk to the school about any changes or supports that might be needed in terms of that young person's behaviours within school. Recently, we've just had some early indications that we've had some improvements in relation to our violence and aggression with our younger children, where we've been able to look at that. But it can be a systemic long-term issue that needs to be dealt with, and some very complex and challenging needs within our school do require sometimes help from other partners, where a mainstream setting is not able to be adapted to such an extent that a child or young person can maintain and regulate their behaviours within a school setting. And therefore it's those other approaches that we're working on with partners about what else could we do, how else can we adapt the school day for that young person, short of excluding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I've just had a note that that Roddy Ross is now present on the meeting and can address hopefully the question that you asked Councillor Braun. Just for Roddy's benefit, I wonder if you would like to repeat your question, Councillor Braun, and then we can have that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got to find the page again. There we go. Yep, the question very simply was to do with unpaid work hours completed. The figure shows that 16,700 against 20,000 target. And I just wondered why there was a difference of what, 3,300 if it's absenteeism or some other reason for it.
Thanks, Councillor Brunt. No, it's a couple of things. As you can see, it's a new target that we developed from it, and effectively when we picked that target, it was based on what we thought the situation would be when we were at full capacity. It's taken a while to build up to that full capacity after the return from COVID. Our client group were, as you probably understand, quite difficult to get back into the rhythm again. So I'm not too concerned about that. Was speaking to Neil and the team just this week about this, and they're seeing significant uplift of numbers coming back in and getting through the hours and getting back into that rhythm of regular attendance and regular hours. So I'm quite comfortable about that. 20,000 was picked as a number around about what we thought we would be able to achieve if everything was running very smoothly and we were fully staffed and all that. So I'm pretty comfortable with 16,700. I would look to that to probably be a bit higher next year, maybe not 20,000, but pushing towards that. And we're already looking at our staffing models, and we look to combine those numbers along with the backlog numbers to just look at that capacity that we have and our capability to deliver for communities.
Fine, thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much. And then to Councillor Drysdale for the next question.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Firstly, I'd like to thank Mrs Devlin for her initial comments surrounding the area of the curriculum for excellence. I wanted to focus on the drive to reduce the attainment gap on literacy and numeracy, and I note that the figures in the report relate to 21-22 rather than 22-23 for understandable reasons. I note that in the commentary that the impact of the COVID pandemic appears to have been felt more by children from more disadvantaged backgrounds, and I guess that's understandable given what we've all experienced. Also note that young people from these backgrounds have nevertheless performed more strongly than ever, which is very encouraging. In particular, I note that at P4 level, there has been a clear improvement, i.e. a reduction in the equity gap. Can you comment on why that is, why in particular around P4 there has been that improvement more markedly than elsewhere? And are you able to give any form of early indication on the direction of travel in 22-23? Do we think that the corner is being turned or not?
Jill Dugan, to answer that one, please.
Good morning, and thank you. Yes, so it's correct that the gap is now improving overall. So we've had a mixed picture, but at P4 overall that has been an improvement. There have been a couple of reasons for that. There has been a particular focus across all ages and stages in primary school around closing that gap, and at primary 4 there's been some targeted work that we've undertaken this year, as we have across all stages as time progresses. So these children obviously have been in the system and had a focus on closing the gap over a number of years, and that's beginning to show dividends, as you've indicated that might be the case. Early indications around our attainment for session 22-23, we're in the process of gathering that data at the moment. Early indications are that we are continuing to make improvements across the board. Further analysis of the gaps will need to be undertaken at this time, but indications at the moment are positive. There's also an indication at P7 that the gap is closing as well, and that would make sense in terms of the work that's been done over a number of years.
Thank you very much. I think a supplementary answer from Sharon Johnston. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And so Jill Dugan has described some of the work that we're doing, Councillor Drysdale, and we are pleased that we're seeing some improvements. I think that's got to be caveated though with the fact that it's a patchy response, and that those children who are most disadvantaged within Perth and Kinross continue to improve less well than those who are least disadvantaged, and therefore we haven't closed the gap as quickly as we would hope, and we're certainly not looking to lower the bar, but to continue to have that improvement right the way across the board. There has been some concerning data that's coming through, notwithstanding the attendance data that we're reporting that our children are not attending as well as they need to. And again, our attendance figures for our most disadvantaged children are worse than those who are least disadvantaged. That is a clear focus for us. But we've also received recent information from our public health colleagues, our health visitors, about the language and communication developmental milestones that are being missed in children at 13 to 15 months, 27 to 30 months in our 4 to 5 year data. And those children are coming into our schools now, in fact, this summer, and will be obviously with us for years to ahead. So we are very well aware of the continuing challenge, and so therefore there's a concerted amount of work around language and communication, particularly in our younger children. And we are focusing very much on literacy, numeracy and health and well-being targets. We are getting much better at knowing what works and focusing very much in on that. And the work of the whole of the education service is very much focused on making sure that that lowest 20%, those most deprived children and young people are where we need to continue that focus. And in fact, we've regarded as a success this year that we've maintained our targets for literacy at early level, given the concerning information that's coming through from our health visitor colleagues around that, and we feel that that actually is a success, that hasn't dropped. We've actually been able to make a difference, but it's going to take a concerted effort, and it may be that our figures next year will be demonstrating you know, less of an improvement than we had hoped previously.
Great, thank you very much. And then Councillor Welch for your question, please.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It's page 37 of 54 in the supplementary pack, and it's the subject of uptake of school meals. It's just to check my understanding of this data. It would appear that we have a significant number of primary pupils who are entitled to free school meals, but literally hundreds, actually thousands, are not doing that, and it continues on into secondary school. Obviously, we're in a cost of living crisis just now, and it's just a bit confusing and concerning that there obviously are some barriers to uptake. And it talks about later on action plans in place to improve all areas of meal uptake. Can I just understand what these action plans are, and just note it's a concern that there's this opportunity to support families, but there's obviously some barriers to children and families doing that. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. I think Sheena Devlin to address this.
Councillor Welsh, the two things I would want to say to you in response to that, the second of the two, if you like, is that I think it was just last week I received some updated data in relation to meal uptake, and it was looking more promising, both in terms of primary and secondary, I think, from memory. What I can do, Vice Convener, if you want, is check that and then circulate the most real-time uptake data that we have following on from committee, if that's appropriate. And in terms of the action plans that we have in place to improve uptake, the secondary uptake has always been more of a challenge than primary school, not least because of the range of options and choices that young people have. And I don't mean in terms of what the options and choices may be if they choose to take a school meal, but where they may be able to take a school meal. And so we spent quite a bit of time last academic year, working with young people across all of our secondary schools and participated in a national survey. And from that got very valuable feedback that we have shared across our colleagues in Dundee and in Angus and with Tayside contracts, which indicated about preferences for secondary young people in terms of a school meal. And an option that was not very favourable was the idea of a large school hall where you would go in and queue to have a sit-down meal, but rather what we call the grab and go kind of approach. And so we have been increasing the number of facilities in our schools that are able to offer that. But we also know, of course, that a kind of grab and go option exists outside the school gates, both in terms of vans that may be there or indeed shops nearby, and young people do express a preference for that, both in terms of the survey results and how they actually vote with their feet. So it is quite a challenge to encourage those, particularly those who are entitled to a free meal, to take up that offer. And the way to do that is to improve the dining experience in line with the feedback that we have from these young people. So that kind of information that we've had from young people is in fact being considered in things like layout of any new builds or any refurbs that we would undertake in schools, but also in terms of how we do then offer. There's work underway across the three constituent partners of Tayside contracts to consider whether we take a more radical move across secondary provision particularly, and I'm not yet sure where that work, if that work has reached a conclusion, but that's certainly something we'll keep you updated about as that work progresses. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. I absolutely understand the if you like, the alternatives for secondary school pupils, for example, in terms of vans or pupils leaving school premises to go separately. But particularly in primary pupils where age of the children means that those, I guess, options are much more limited. It does seem a significant number of families and children are missing out on this, and as I say, that is a concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ryan, you've indicated you've got a question or a comment. You're welcome to a second question. If it's a comment, though, we can hold it till later. Up to you. Okay, go ahead.
Myself, it's gone. Thank you, colleague. Yeah, under scrutiny and performance, we always challenge some of the numbers, and I think it's quite a nice thing that we're also able to celebrate success. On page 22 of the report, and it's page 34 of our paper, it talks about young people and the number of awards that they've achieved. And I think the fact that we've done so well, having had a target of 600, but we've actually had 810 successes over a broad range of achievements. It's fantastic to see, and I'd just really like to say well done to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Councillor Stewart, your question.
Thanks. I'm looking at the some of the learning achievements statistics, and this maybe follows on a little bit from Councillor Drysdale's question. So on page 19 of the report, or page 29 of our supplementary papers, we've got the literacy and numeracy figures for P1, 4 and 7, percentage of pupils achieving the expected levels of literacy and numeracy. And they're sitting at somewhere around 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 children, certainly higher than 1 in 5, but almost 1 in 4 children not achieving expected levels of literacy and numeracy. The target there appears to be just our the numbers from our comparator local authorities, but I wonder whether, and I appreciate that the numbers are similar in terms of the national averages, but are these really? Are we really saying that between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 children are leaving primary school not achieving the not being able to read, write, and count? And what effect does that have on future development in future achievement in terms of secondary school, secondary education?
There are a number of factors that will sit behind the data, Councillor Stewart, and I did say in my introduction that it is our determination that we continue to improve the outcomes for as many children and young people as we can across all of our schools. In Perth and Kinross, the number of young people with additional support needs is in excess of 30%. And therefore, without breaking that down into the different kinds of additional support needs, there will be a number of young people who have an additional support need that will mean that a nationally expected level of attainment is something that would not ever be achievable for them because of their particular need. Now, that won't be all of the young people who are in the 1 in 4 that you have described, and I absolutely accept that, but there will be a significant proportion in there, and that's not new or different, or indeed specifically COVID related in terms of the legacy of COVID. That is something that has always been the case. But what there will be is a clear setting of targets for those young people and a monitoring of progress towards achieving those particular targets for those young people, which of course is not reported in a high level document like this. So that would be the first thing I would want to say. And I know that Sharon wants to come in with a bit more information that may sit behind some of that as well, if that's acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. The figures that you have in front of you are the combined figures for P1, 4 and 7. And as the Executive Director has said, then that includes all children, including those with additional support needs. We know that by primary 7, our figures, we are actually adding value, and in terms of our interventions, the figures for P7 are actually above that. So there are some lower figures at P1 and P4, and we have that data available. We have made a significant improvement actually at P7 this year. But there are also two other factors that are important, I think, in relation to figures in primary schools. If you take the whole of the learner journey from early years right the way through to our senior phase, our children in Perth and Kinross perform above the national comparators when they leave school, and it's not because the secondary are looking at the deficits of a primary school. There are a couple of issues that we have to look at nationally, but within Perth and Kinross there's the teacher judgments, because teacher judgments are subjective and they're supported by things like progression frameworks. But we've consistently noted that our teacher judgments in Perth and Kinross at primary level can be overcautious. And we know that because every time we have an inspection, our inspection feedback is that sometimes what we say our young children can achieve is actually less than what the inspection team think. So we've got a real focus on moderation to make sure that our teacher judgments are more accurate, because there seems to be a big jump between primary 7 and S3, which doesn't actually correlate with a child's progress. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is, of course, that our children who are most deprived still are not providing enough progress that would make us satisfied that we're doing everything we need to do. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So just as we come to the end of questions, if anyone else has a question, put it in. But meantime, I'll just ask a short follow-up to really the line of questioning that Councillor Welch was following, to the extent of wondering, do we have any data, even if it's anecdotal information, as to the number of pupils eligible for free school meals in secondary who are not taking them? How many, I guess they're breakdown into two groups, those who are getting food elsewhere versus those who are skipping lunch. Do we have any information as to how frequently that might happen? Have we ever asked that question?
I think I'm right in saying, Bailey, that we will have information, we'll have the data in terms of those who are eligible but do not exercise that eligibility. So we certainly would have that. In terms of the second part of your question, I'm not sure that we would have that information, because some young people would not necessarily tell us that, and it may not be something that we would wish to formally record. However, I know that across our school estate, teachers, whether they be class teachers, teachers of support or guidance, head teachers, are vigilant to those young people who may appear to have poorer concentration, for example, that may be attributable to being hungry, and that no young child, no young person in our schools would ever go hungry and without anything to eat on any given day if that was indeed observed and noticed. So I would want to give committees assurance that we would certainly provide assurance that that level of vigilance is there and in all of our schools. So very happy to provide the data that would be split between those entitled and uptake of entitled, but I couldn't provide the data for the second part of your question. Thank you.
I think that would be useful, and I think the second part is the interesting part, but it's very reassuring to know that that safety net exists there. So really grateful for that reassurance. So we've had no further requests for questions. So would anyone like to make comment on the paper? Going once. Oh, Councillor Carr, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that despite unprecedented difficulties in recent years, it's heartening to see continued improvements in the education and the positive destinations of our children and young people. This must surely be a testament, despite these difficult challenges, to the hard work and dedication from our education team in Perth and Kinross. I think we can view ourselves as being very lucky to have so many hard-working individuals focused on providing the best that they can for our children and young people.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Echo Councillor Carr's comments. I know the hard work and dedication that goes on right across the whole area of service. I was pleased that Councillor Allen flagged up the really good news story about the awards that young people are achieving. That's the stuff that goes on beyond the textbooks or laptops in the classroom, but it's the stuff that really adds value to the confidence and success of a lot of young people and gives them that extra thing to put on a CV when you come out of school and you've got your swimming certificate, and that's about it. In the narrative there, it talks about our Universal Youth Work partnership, which is pioneering, and I will always recall being at an event with national youth work providers where they were all bemoaning their cuts to the budgets for youth work, and we could say that in Perth and Kinross it was something that we were actually working in partnership with the Gannachie and prioritising, and it's delivering outcomes right across the council area for young people, and is something that we should cherish, protect and ensure continues for many years to come. So I think it's important in all of that we do focus on the positives. And final comment is regarding the points that Sharon Johnson was making about the moderation and giving staff the confidence to actually accurately report what they're seeing in their classrooms, and not to be shy and retiring about the achievements that they actually are delivering on, because when external assessment comes in, they're seeing a much better picture than perhaps teachers who are tired and had a long week and then have to fill in some monitoring reports might actually see. So all of that positive needs to be grasped onto, and is kind of sitting behind a lot of these stats. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I don't see any further comments. It falls to me to thank officers for obviously the mountain of work that goes on behind the scenes on these things. These reports are presumably the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the real bulk of effort that's going on that we don't obviously see day to day. And is the committee happy that we have sufficiently questioned and scrutinised the report? Thank you. And I didn't pick up any formal comments we'd want to pass to the service committee, the thematic committees. Was there anything anyone wanted to formally pass? Okay, thank you. So then moving on to item 8, which is the annual governance statement. So I'd turn to Lisa Simpson to please introduce the report.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Members, what you have before you is the draft annual governance statement, which requires to be attached to the draft accounts, which will be presented to the Audit and Risk Committee at the end of June. Given that scrutiny and accountability is a key element of good governance, then we bring it to this committee here to offer you the opportunity to scrutinise that and provide comment and feedback. The annual governance statement looks at our system of internal control across our entire governance framework, which includes the whole spectrum from leadership, culture and values right the way through to scrutiny, accountability, systems, controls, processes, tools, technology, etc. It's a robust process that we go through, and I'd like to thank all of the officers and the service management teams who have provided all the relevant data, and in particular to Jackie Clark, the Chief Internal Auditor, who has done a sterling job in corralling all the data in quite a short space of time to be able to present it at this particular point of time, and through her and the Policy and Governance Group for providing that scrutiny and assurance at officer level of the data that's being gathered and collated. I'm pleased to report that we are satisfied that the system of internal control and our governance framework is robust and effective. that is not to say that we are complacent. There are always areas for improvement, and you'll see that they have been identified in terms of themes towards the end of the statement. I would also add that a number of other areas that we would wish to look at are already being actively looked at as part of the Transformation and Change programme. So we are already looking to review and improve our systems, processes and structures around certain aspects of procurement, financial management and structures, and HR, and all of the various other bits that we heard about this morning. It's very unusual that we have this being presented at the same time as the service management reports. So there's an awful lot of the questions that you might have that have already been answered. Can I just say for the record, and I am aware that there is F&R this afternoon and that there is lunchtime, I will not be offended if you don't have thousands of questions for us, but I will not read anything into that in terms of how important that you, or how much value you attach to this annual governance review process. But there are a number of officers here who can answer any particular questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions nonetheless? Any comments on the report? Councillor Stewart.
Thanks. In 4.4 we reference the extended induction refresher programme of training for elected members following the election, and a long-term programme of personal development that's being implemented. Early on in the council term there were a lot of sessions. I think we've had fewer more recently, and it would be good to get some of the ongoing development work up and running. And I think following the discussion that we had, just the presentation from the head of innovation and the executive lead from strategic planning just before the annual performance reports, I think it would be useful to update section 415 relating to the business management and improvement plans. While that is, while those are currently, well, actually, no, the business management improvement plans have finished at the end of the year there, so it would be just useful to note the development of that process going forward.
It's a valid point in terms of the elected member induction. That programme, we do still have very big plans for that. It's finding time. It's quite difficult in terms of busy diaries. There will also be an individual opportunity. Invites will be dropping into inboxes hopefully quite soon for individual elected member development discussions, so that can shape the programme, and there is a programme being developed in terms of key thematic things flowing from the corporate plan and any of the issues that come out from that. So it is very much being prioritised and will be an active programme.
Thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to hear that the individual elected member sort of improvement, those annual sessions are coming back, because I found those very useful through the last term. I'd encourage new councillors to give those a go. I know there's lots of demands on our time, but they are very worthwhile. So I suppose if there are no further comments or questions, is the committee then happy to note the content of the report? Thank you very much. So we'll move then on to item 9, which is the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership Clinical Care and Governance Assurance Report update. And I believe that Kenny Ogilvie is on the line to provide an introduction to this one. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. This report is to provide awareness to the committee of 2 exceptions from the Health and Social Care Partnership. The first exception is relating to a shortage of social work staff at the Integrated Discharge Hub. And the Integrated Discharge Hub supports people to discharge from hospitals across Perth and Kinross. It's a combination of long-term sickness and vacancies, and we are managing that risk through daily reviews of workload and capacity, recruitment to vacant posts. Last week we over-recruited to a social work assistant vacancy, and there are interviews for a social work post today, and the plan is to over-recruit by 1 whole-time equivalent for that as well. We have accessed an agency worker to try and mitigate any capacity issues, and also the locality teams are supporting with hospital referrals as required. So it is an improving picture, and like I say, we are getting that extra capacity in from those various areas to give us time to manage any long-term sickness absence and address any performance issues in the team. We're also recruiting to an improvement officer for 12 months. And that post will operationally manage the social work side of the team and support the wider team with the development and implementation of an integrated structure. Like I say, we have been short-staffed, and there was a risk that this would impact on the number of people delayed in the hospitals. To date, that hasn't happened, and as I say, it is an improving picture, and we are confident that with the mitigating actions there will be no adverse effect in terms of the number of delayed discharges or people delayed in hospital. The second exception is relating to restrictions in the use of agency staff, in particular agency nurses across the Health and Social Care Partnership. Restrictions in agency use were eased during the COVID-19 pandemic. They have now been put back in place, and we have become reliant on agency staff across a number of areas in the Health and Social Care Partnership. The main concerns are listed in the report, but in particular HNP, Perth and St Margaret's Hospital. So again, we are mitigating this through daily monitoring of the situation. We have implemented an escalation policy as well, and between a combination of overtime for permanent members of staff, use of the NHS nursing bank, and limited use of Tier 1 agency staff, we have managed to date to fill all the shifts that we're requiring filled. This was the restrictions were imposed on the 1st of June, and since the 1st of June we have been managed to fill all the shifts, so there is no current risk to patients due to low staffing levels, and we are confident that the arrangements that we have in place we will continue to manage to fill those shift patterns. And just for your information, in terms of the agencies for healthcare staff, they are tiered, with Tier 3 being the most expensive and Tier 1 being the cheaper. So the aim of this is to try and encourage people on the agencies to actually move from the agencies to the NHS bank, or even better, into the permanent vacancies that we have in the partnership and NHS Tayside, across NHS Tayside. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from anyone? I have a question from Councillor Robertson. Please go ahead.
Thank you. You said that you're going to, thank you for the presentation. You said you were actually going to employ someone in a 12-month contract to help with the situation in the first part of your presentation. How easy is that to do? I'd have thought it was very hard to get somebody to take on a 12-month post. The interviews are next week, and I believe there have been applicants. It'll probably be a secondment from somebody already working for the Health and Social Care Partnership. So it is possible to fill that post?
Yes, we're confident we will get that filled with a person with the necessary skills.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Smith, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Convener. I'm just a wee bit upset with some of the wording here. There is a risk that hospital delayed discharges could be adversely affected by the staffing challenge, but that has not occurred to date. It has. Thank you.
Okay. Is this relating to? Sorry.
Just to intervene, Councillor Smith, if going further would involve divulging personal information, maybe you could take it up separately with Mr. Ogilvie if there's something you'd like to share here. But I think that was more a challenge than a question. Do you wish to have it addressed in this forum, or?
I think Mr. Ogilvie will know the situation that I'm speaking about at the moment. How can I put it? It was not just one incident, there was one or two incidents here, so I'd better keep it back for personal reasons. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just come in and just,
yes,
you know,
go ahead.
as of yesterday afternoon, in terms of the overall picture for the lead discharge in Perth and Kinross, we were actually sitting on amber, and we were down to 9 people delayed on the acute wards in PRI, and our target is keeping that below 10 to ensure that the hospital is able to function. So I stand by my statement. It is an improved picture, and this has not adversely impacted on delayed discharges or the number of people delayed.
Thank you, Mr. Ogilvie, and thank you for highlighting the concern, Councillor Smith. Councillor Drysdale, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thanks, Kenny, for your report. I just wanted to pick up on the issues and the concern around the integrated discharge hub at PRI. Yeah, you've made it clear that that we're coping, if you like, and it's a challenging situation, and I'm quite sure that in terms of decisions on discharge, that decisions err on the side of caution and are not. It's not a case of getting people out there at all costs, and I know that is the case from my previous role, obviously, with IJB. However, can you just give me some form of reassurance around whether this is impacting at all on readmissions, either within 7 or 28 days of discharge, or is that situation stable in terms of statistics at this time? Thanks.
In terms of the number of people being readmitted, it is stable. There's been no impact or no rise or fall. What we are doing is we are doing a deep dive, as we're calling it, into the numbers of readmissions. They are still higher than we would like. But in terms of the actual figure, it's been fairly stable over the last 6, 7, 8 months. So in terms of this particular concern that we've got regarding the social work staffing levels in the discharge hub, there's no evidence that that is impacting the number of readmissions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further questions here. Are there any other further questions people would like? Any comments to the paper? Okay, in the absence of any further questions or comments, then I'd ask the committee, are we happy to note the report and the current status? Thank you very much. Back across to you then, Convener.
Thank you, Vice Convener. We're now moving on to item P1 on the agenda. Members, neither the Vice Convener or I are big supporters of holding discussions in private. However, given the content of this paper, the fact that it would not qualify for release under by virtue of Section 30 of the Freedom of Information Act, and also that it would qualify under Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act as exempt business. And in order to encourage a free and open and challenging discussion between members and officers, I'm content to hold this in private, and the Vice Convener too. Our member, is the committee content as well? Agreed. Okay, thank you. That'll end the public session, and we'll go into the private session. If members could leave this chat in Microsoft Teams and go to the private session. Thank you very much.